Mario is a series that is not unfamiliar to the RPG genre. With the original Super Mario RPG, the Paper Mario games, and even stranger contenders like the Rabbids crossover, Mario has had plenty of RPG outings. But there is one more Mario RPG series that I would probably consider my personal favorite, Mario and Luigi. These games are some of the most fun I've ever had with an RPG, and while I can't necessarily confirm this claim, I'm pretty sure Mario and Luigi Partners in Time was probably my first RPG ever. But for one reason or another, we haven't gotten a new entry in the series since 2016, aside from a few remakes. So as part of my grieving process, as well as to fuel my slight hope that the series may return, I'm going to be looking through every single Mario and Luigi game. So the first game in the Mario & Luigi series is Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. This game was released on the GBA back in 2003, and man, this game is a delight. Superstar Saga is far from the first game in the series that I played. I first played it when the remake came out back in 2017, and then finally got around to playing the original just this year. To be completely honest, this game is probably my second favorite in the whole series, which just shows how well it has aged. So the setup for this game is that Princess Peach has had her voice stolen by Cackletta and her minion Fawful, and you have to travel to the Bean Bean Kingdom to get it back. The game's plot eventually turns into a hunt for the pieces of the Bean Star, but to be honest, the plot of the game isn't all that important. The story in this game is more just to get you to the places it wants you to go, which works pretty well considering the series we are talking about here. I think the story excels in just putting you in fun and weird situations. Like, why is Mario spitting soda into a woman's mouth? Because it's essential to the plot, now shut up. The game's world is set up in a pretty simple yet effective way. You have one big central area with a town and some things to do that branches off into different areas you need to go to progress the story. While the central area is fully explorable from the beginning, I wouldn't say that this game is non-linear because there are very specific places you need to be at specific times. But I guess it's sort of open world. There is a world, and it is open, I guess. It kind of reminds me of how Ocarina of Time's map is set up, just to a smaller scale, of course. But what this map really excels at is putting you in fun and new places. This is a whole new kingdom in the Mario world that we have never seen before or after this game, so they had full reign to just kind of do whatever they want. New races, new enemies, new versions of old enemies, giant soda monsters. Awful. But in case you forgot, this game is an RPG, which means that every few minutes your exploration must be interrupted by the dreaded turn-based combat. Wait a minute, guys. This battle system might not be so bad. You can press B to jump as Luigi. So this game's main battling gimmick is action commands. These were present in the original Mario RPG and the Paper Mario games, but this game takes that concept and makes it much more involved. While the traditional jump and hammer attacks are pretty similar to how they function in Paper Mario, this game shakes it up a little bit with the ability to completely dodge or even counterattack enemy attacks. Whenever an enemy attacks you, you either have the ability to jump or swing at it with your hammer. This allows you to avoid damage and maybe even do a little extra damage yourself. You see, I like this a lot because my least favorite thing to do is just sit and watch in horror as some enemy comes and does a bunch of damage to my characters when there is nothing I can really do. Also, instead of your normal special or magic attacks, we now have bros attacks which use both Mario and Luigi and usually require a certain button combination along with correct timing. The game not only rewards you with XP for doing battles, but also the satisfaction of knowing that you are getting better and better at attacking and dodging. I think this style of battling is not only fun, but just suits Mario really well. Like, yeah, of course Mario's not just going to stand there and get hit by a fireball, he's going to jump over it, that's his thing. But these commands extend to outside the battles as well, as you'll be using all kinds of different moves and tricks to get around the world. You have basic jumps you can do by pressing A for Mario and B for Luigi, but as you progress in the game you get more moves available in the overworld that allow you to cross gaps, jump to higher areas, and stuff like that. While this isn't my favorite Mario & Luigi game, I think it's still just as good or better than some of the later entries. And if you haven't played it yet, the original is on NSO, and there is a remake on 3DS. Go play it now. The next game released in the Mario & Luigi series would be on Nintendo's new, at the time, portable console, the Nintendo DS. Now, the Nintendo DS had a lot of upgrades from the GBA, with the console obviously being a pretty decent hardware upgrade with it being able to do a lot more 3D stuff. The console also had this fancy new touchscreen, which hadn't really become mainstream with stuff like smartphones yet. So since this new Mario & Luigi game was released so early on in the console's life, it obviously was going to want to show off some of its new features. So which ones did it focus on? the X and Y button. That's right, with this shiny new piece of hardware, the series developer Alpha Dream took a good hard look at all the new possibilities and said, holy crap, we can add 2 more Marios. This all eventually led to the development of Mario and Luigi Partners in Time, which would become my first outing in this series. So the story for this game begins with Egad testing out his new time machine by sending the literal monarch of the Mushroom Kingdom back to the past without any prior trips to see if it was safe. I mean, come on, you got a few toads you could toss in there, nobody'll miss them that much. So, to no one's surprise, the time machine test does not go well, and Peach gets captured by aliens. The Mario Bros then find these portals that have sprung up throughout the castle that lead to the past, using them to team up with the baby versions of themselves to find the princess. From then on, it's the usual Mario and Luigi shenanigans that we were introduced to in the first game, but with some babies here too. Now, a lot of people consider this game to be the darkest Mario and Luigi game. May I now remind you that this is the game with Yoob in it? Now, to be fair, the game does have some moments that are a little darker than the rest of the series, like Holly Jolly Village. That part of the game is even more depressing when you're playing it in December, but overall, I feel like the game has a very lighthearted tone to it. For every Christmas-themed village being destroyed by aliens, there's like 10 lighthearted interactions between the bros and their baby counterparts. I will say, though, that I think that this is one of the most interesting stories in the series to me. I think the Shroobs are a really interesting antagonist, especially compared to some of the later entries. The time travel idea is also just fun. Speaking of time travel, that is how you get to all of the different locations you go to in this game. Unlike the last game, instead of having one giant interconnected world, we now have one smaller hub world with Peach's castle. Inside of the castle, there are a bunch of different time portals that lead to all of the different locations you travel to in this game. Now, some people might see this as a pretty big downgrade compared to Superstar Saga's more open world approach, but to me, with the context of this game's story and what it's trying to do, I think it works fine. It makes sense that they wouldn't want to make a past and present version of every single area, so just making the castle your gateway to all of the different time portals doesn't really bother me. The way Superstar Saga did it was definitely more interesting though. But on to the most important part, we have the gameplay. Now, for the most part, traveling around the world is pretty similar to how it was in the last game. Both the bros and the babies have different moves they can use to traverse the world. The main thing that can get kind of annoying is that certain moves are exclusive to either the babies or the adult Mario Bros. This means that you are constantly having to split them up, and it can make things a little more complicated than they need to be. But on to the combat in this game. Remember the combat from the last one? You see, this series has a very if it ain't broke, don't fix it mindset, and tends to focus on adding new gimmicks to the system that has already existed instead of coming up with an entire new system, which we can't say about one of the other Mario RPG series. In this game's case, we have the babies who, if split up from the bros, can also battle by themselves, making their combat basically identical to regular combat, but you press X and Y instead of A and B. But if both pairs are together when battling, you have access to extra action commands that allow you to do a little extra damage with all of your moves. Another big change with the combat in this game is with the bros attacks. In the last game, you could only use bros attacks if you had enough BP to use them, but in this game, bros attacks are just items that you can buy at a shop, meaning that you can just get a bunch of money and have access to as many bros attacks as you want. This is just a weird change because the old system worked fine, and this new one is very easily exploitable. Overall, this game definitely isn't as good as the original, but I also don't think it's bad at all. This is a very enjoyable game, but just has more problems than its predecessor did. But to be fair, I also think this game has a lot more of its own identity, with things like the Shroobs, who aren't seen very much after this game. Also, this game has Yoob. Let's not forget that. The next game we have is Bowser's Inside Story, and oh boy, this one's good. So the setup for the game is that a mysterious disease called the Blorbs is spreading through the Mushroom Kingdom and turning its residents into giant balls. While a meeting is being held on the issue, Bowser comes in and sucks everybody into his body because he ate a mushroom that was sold to him by Fawful from the first game. You see, the plot I just described to you sounded really stupid, and that's because it's really stupid, but it's a fun kind of stupid. Just like the last two games, the story is more meant to just get you to the places it wants you to go, but I think this game does a much better job than the last two of making that story really fun and interesting. The main antagonist of this game is the returning Fawful from Superstar Saga, and to be honest, I think this character works way better as the main villain than just the wacky henchman. Every interaction with him is really enjoyable because he's a funny character, but he's still hateable enough to where it feels good to basically kill him at the end of the game. It's also just a fun idea to have a character return like this and be the main villain, especially since continuity and Mario don't usually go together. I also think that having Bowser as a main character works really well. The version of Bowser in these games is probably my favorite, so having more of him isn't a bad thing. But on to the game itself, that's where this one really shines. The game is split up between two main characters that you play as. We have Mario and Luigi, who control like your typical Mario and Luigi game. The main difference here though is that most of their sections take place inside of Bowser's body. Later on in the game there are some parts where you go to the outside world, but for the most part you stay inside the big turtle. When inside of Bowser, the game takes a 2D perspective, which sounds a little weird at first, but I honestly think it works really well. They did a really good job of still making all of these areas very explorable, with secrets to find and other rewards for doing more than just sticking on the main path. Bros attacks are actually now something that you get for exploring and finding these special blocks, which I feel gives you a good reason to do more than just go where the game tells you in doing these sections. The sections inside of Bowser also look really interesting. They did a really good job of taking certain parts of the body and turning them into places that Mario and Luigi can explore. But we have one other playable character in the form of Bowser who is able to explore the world outside of his own body. Bowser lacks a lot of the abilities that Mario and Luigi have for traversing the world, like jumping, but he makes up for that by having new abilities like his strong punch or breathing fire. They did a really good job of creating a new style of gameplay for this game. Honestly, after playing all of these games that for the most part play the same, it can be really refreshing to have a character that switches things up as much as Bowser does. Now, as far as the combat goes, for Mario and Luigi, it's exactly what you have come to expect from the last two games. You have your hammer, jump, and bros attacks that function exactly as you would expect them to. Thankfully, they changed the bros attacks back to the normal BP system, so you can't just completely abuse that system. But the big addition to the battling in this game is being able to play as Bowser. His battles tend to involve larger enemies that do more damage and have more health. Bowser also has higher damage and health stats, so this change is more there just to show that Bowser is stronger than the main duo. He also has different attacks like his punch and fire breath attack. These function pretty much exactly as you would expect them to and are pretty fun to use. I think one of the coolest things you can do in these battles is his suck attack. I know that's not a great name for it, but I don't know what else to call it. This allows you to suck in smaller enemies and allow Mario and Luigi to attack them for a little while. I think this is a really cool system because it allows both battle styles to be present in the same fight. This keeps some of the fights really interesting and fun. Honestly, other than that, I don't have a lot to say about this game. This is probably one of my favorite Mario RPGs, and I would really recommend playing it if you haven't already. There's also a remake of this game. We will get to that later. Following the release of Bowser's Inside Story, it was finally time for the series to move off of the DS and onto the brand new 3DS. Now look, no matter what, it was going to be hard to follow up on the last Mario & Luigi game because it was probably the greatest Mario RPG ever made. But I'm going to be honest, they probably still could have done better than this. So, Mario & Luigi Dream Team is the next entry in the series, and I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan. Now, to a degree, this is still a fun game because it still has some of those Mario & Luigi fundamentals like the battling system that keep it from being a bad experience, but in all other areas, this game just kind of feels like a downgrade from all the other games that came before it. One of the biggest noticeable differences between this game and the last three is the new art style. I know a lot of people don't really like it, but to be honest, I think it's fine. I don't think it looks as good as the sprite work from the older games, but it doesn't necessarily look bad in any way. My problems with this game begin, well, at the beginning of the game when the characters refuse to shut up for more than 5 seconds. This game's tutorial goes on for longer than I thought a tutorial ever could. In the past games, there were always tutorial sections, but they were a very small fraction of the game. This game just takes so long to introduce you to every single tiny detail of traversal or battling. It took me like 2 hours before I could even use a bros attack. Like, that is stuff that should be in the first 30 minutes of the game. A lot of these game mechanics are also very similar to the last game, which had an extremely short tutorial section, so when you put them up side by side, it makes this one seem even more agonizingly long. The gameplay in this game is fun, but I feel like I only get it in spurts because I can't go 2 seconds before I have to mash the A button through random dialogue. This also wouldn't be as bad of an issue if the dialogue was interesting, but the characters are basically just saying nothing or taking way too long to explain a very simple plot. Speaking of the plot, this game starts with Mario and the gang being invited to a resort island being run by the block guy from the last game. On the way there, you fight the main antagonist of the game for like 5 seconds. This is before you have any idea of who or what he is, and you learn later that he shouldn't even be able to be in the real world yet, so what was the point of this? If they just wanted a tutorial battle to get you used to the combat, why didn't they just use Bowser? Even the game where you play as Bowser does that. Once you get to the island, you learn of a race of people trapped in pillows around the island, and you have to help them by going into the dream world by having Luigi sleep on one of these pillows. Also, Peach gets kidnapped in the dream world for a little bit, then you save her and the plot moves on to something else from there. To me, this game just kind of lacks a lot of the charm of the first 3 games. The plots in those games aren't masterpieces or anything, but they're just weird and fun, and that's what I like about them. This game just feels extremely predictable and boring, which is really weird when the whole gimmick of the game is dreams, the most unpredictable thing I can think of. Then when you finally get to play the game, I mean, yeah, it's fun. It plays like all of the other Mario & Luigi games. The battling system is pretty much unchanged from the last game. That goes for traversing around the world as well. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, since the last game did those things very well. But I think this game has a chance to really shine in the dream sections. A pretty large chunk of this game is dedicated to going inside of Luigi's dreams to either progress in the story or save some of those pillow people. These sections have a lot of potential to be really weird and interesting, which is great because I think the rest of the game is kind of lacking some of that. But upon entering one of these sections, they are basically just a 2D version of the area that you were already in. It's just really disappointing because in the last game they got way more creative with the idea of exploring the insides of a turtle, but when given an idea with endless possibilities, they just didn't really do anything with it. There is one section in a place called Dreams Deep that I thought was really cool, and it only lasted for like a few minutes, but I wish the rest of the dream sections were more like this. In these dream sections, the combat is changed up a little from the normal. You no longer have both Mario and Luigi to play as, you just have Mario who is powered up by Luigi using his dream abilities. To me, these battles aren't really different enough compared to the Bowser battles or even having the babies and Partners in Time. These battles just feel like normal battles, but with one less character. You do get the Luiginary moves, which can be pretty fun to use, so I'll give it that. This gimmick just overall feels pretty tacked on, and while I don't really hate it, I also wouldn't really care that much if it wasn't in the game. I know it sounds like I really don't like this game, but I did have some fun playing it. At its core, it's still a Mario & Luigi game, which I enjoy, but I think its problems are just very easy to notice and then complain about. At the end of the day, I think this game is just fine, could be a lot better, could be a lot worse. After Dream Team, the developers of the series set their sights on not only creating a new Mario & Luigi game, but also creating what could have possibly been one of the coolest Mario crossovers to ever exist. Notice how I said it could have been. The next game in the Mario & Luigi series was set to be a crossover with the legendary Mario RPG series Paper Mario. On paper, this sounds like a great idea, as both series are incredible interpretations of the Mario world, and seeing them come together could be incredibly fun. But one of the first notable concerns about this crossover is that during this time, the Paper Mario series was having some trouble with being fun video games. I did a whole video on this topic a little while ago, so if you're curious about that, I would recommend watching it. But in summary, at this time, the series had become extremely bland, with the games basically abandoning all of the originality the original Paper Mario games had. They also made some weird changes to the battle system, and it just wasn't as fun anymore. It was definitely a concern of mine that some of these problems would transfer over to this crossover, but I guess there is really only one way to find out. So when starting up the game, the plot is very simple. Luigi accidentally knocks a book off the shelf that then unleashes the characters of Paper Mario into the Mario & Luigi world. That's about it for the whole game. It's immediately noticeable that this game will not be featuring any characters that are original to the Paper Mario or even the Mario & Luigi series. Much like the Paper Mario games at the time, this game is full of Toads and your usual Mario enemies. The one thing that separates this game is that there are paper and non-paper versions of NPCs and enemies, which can give a cool contrast between the looks of the two types of characters. There are also parts of the world that have these giant sections of paper terrain that once again give a cool contrast, but other than this, the game doesn't really take much advantage of this game being a Paper Mario crossover. We don't get interactions between original Paper Mario characters and original Mario and Luigi characters. We just get interactions between Bowser and Paper Bowser, Peach and Paper Peach, Toads and Paper Toads. It doesn't really feel like they made a crossover with the Paper Mario series, but rather they just made a Mario and Luigi game with paper being the gimmick. The locations you travel to in this game are also pretty bland. It's just the typical Mario rotation of areas like grass and desert, and I've done this rant before, so I'm just going to stop now. So if the story and locations are all bland, what about the gameplay? Is it anything special? Yeah, actually. To my surprise, even though I didn't like a lot about this game, I still enjoyed playing it because they did a really good job with the actual gameplay. Traversing the world is about the same as it usually is, but you now have a sprint move which allows you to move much quicker. Tutorials are much better compared to the last game, with most of them being completely optional, and even if they aren't, they are super brief and barely take any of your time. It's clear that they definitely learned from their mistakes in the last game. The battle system is where I think the game really shines though. While for the most part it's the same as all the games that came before it, we now have the addition of Paper Mario. Paper Mario has similar attacks to the other two with the jump and hammer attacks, but his attacks do much less damage along with him having a lower amount of health. At first it sounds like this character sucks, but you also have the ability to make copies of yourself, which allows you to take extra hits as well as do more damage or even damage multiple enemies at once. This allows him to feel different enough to really change up how you battle while not completely changing the system. I genuinely think that Paper Mario is just as good of an addition as the babies from Partners in Time or Bowser in Inside Story. Paper Mario also allows you to use trio attacks, which are basically more powerful bros attacks, and just like the bros attacks, they are really fun to use. The fights in this game also tend to be much more challenging than past games, at least from what I've played. I'm not really sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing, because from my point of view, it's nice to have a bit more of a challenge after playing the other games, but I could also see people that are new to the series getting frustrated and not enjoying it that much. The game also has these papercraft battles, which are sort of just the gimmick that they put on the back of the box. I wasn't a huge fan of these, but I also didn't hate them, so I guess they're fine. The main gameplay addition that I wasn't a huge fan of is that every so often the game will come to a complete halt and tell you to go save some paper toads. There are so many of these mini games that you have to do just to progress through the game, and it's very obvious that it's just there to pad out the game. I honestly think that the game would have much better pacing if it weren't for these sections sticking themselves where they aren't needed. Overall, I had fun playing this game and definitely enjoyed it more than I did Dream Team, but I do still feel like this game was held back just by the fact that they didn't really do anything interesting with the story and just feels pretty generic overall. So that was every main entry in the Mario and Luigi series. But we're not quite done yet, because after Paper Jam there were two remakes released on the 3DS. The first was a remake of the original Superstar Saga, and man, I love this remake. I feel that this remake is able to keep a lot of the charm of the original game, while also making it feel a lot smoother than the original and more in line with newer entries. I love the original, but I have to admit that I much prefer this remake. This was the first version of Superstar Saga that I ever played, and I could not put it down once I started. And with the past two games being good, but lacking some of that Mario and Luigi charm, this remake was just what the series needed to remind people why the series was so good to begin with. Overall, I really don't have any complaints about this remake. It's probably even one of my favorite 3DS games. But the problem is, after this game, they didn't decide to move on to a new game on the Switch. They instead decided to make another remake on the 3DS, of a game you could already play on the 3DS. In 2019. I love the 3DS, but even I have to admit that releasing a remake on the console while its successor was already out for almost 2 years was just not a good idea. The series developer Alpha Dream had decided that they would remake the most critically acclaimed game in the series, Bowser's Inside Story. Now, look, a remake of that game sounds awesome. Not on the 3DS though. You could already play this game on 3DS unlike Superstar Saga, so it probably would have just made more sense to release the remake on Switch. But even despite all of this, I don't hate this remake like a lot of other people do. I think the new art style looks fine. I do prefer the sprites in the original because those just look really good, but I think the new style works. The biggest problem with the game is probably the frame rate. It's at 30, which usually isn't a big deal, but when the remake of Superstar Saga and the original Bowser's Inside Story both run at 60, this game just feels like a downgrade. Like I said, I don't hate this remake, and I actually beat it when it came out and had a fun time, but you're probably better off just playing the original. I honestly don't know why they didn't remake Partners in Time instead. I love that game, but it definitely had some changes that needed to be made, unlike the game they did remake, which was kind of already the perfect Mario & Luigi game. Oh yeah, and the remakes had these weird side modes that came with them, because I guess they thought that the games needed another selling point. If you want to hear my thoughts on those, I actually did a video on them a while back. So that was the Mario & Luigi series. I had a lot of fun looking back at these games, as they are some of my favorite Mario spin-offs. Sadly, Alpha Dream ended up going bankrupt after they released the Bowser's Inside Story remake, and we haven't seen anything from the series since. It's a real shame, as even the worst games in the series were fun to a degree, so seeing it go dormant like this makes me pretty sad. But hey, Nintendo is remaking a lot of fan-favorite Mario RPGs right now, so it's completely possible that we could see the series return either through a new game or more likely a remake. But no matter what happens to the series after this, I'm glad I got to play the games I did. Really though, they should do a Partners in Time remake. Imagine Yoob in HD.